ladies and gentlemen, have you come for the Lyceum? No, well that's good because you are terribly early. Well, I am Adelia Brooks and I'm the schoolmistress here. I haven't always been a schoolmistress. As in the time of war, like many others, I've been thrust into a position I did not originally seek, and I must say is a taxing one. As you have noticed, seeing as how I have scholars from ages from 6 to 18, I have up to 45 lessons to prepare each evening. And that's what I was working on when you came in. As I mentioned, I haven't always been a schoolmistress. I'm originally from Hadley and a farm girl at heart. But unfortunately, my father's farm never bounced back from the economic recessions of the 1840s. So as soon as I was old enough, at age 16 after I had finished the 12th level of school, I was sent east to work in the mills of wool. I didn't mind the work, of course. It was hot and noisy, but I made a lot of friends. Us mill girls didn't think much about it when South Carolina seceded from the Union. And then, of course, the fighting started down there in South Carolina, and they called for volunteers. Immediately, my brothers joined up, as did all of the other young men I had grown up with. And then the blockade was in effect, and the cotton stopped coming. Without work, one does not need workers, and we were all sent home. My father needed help on the farm, but big city life had given me great ideas, and being under my father's thumb was not one of them. So it was a blessing when we received a letter from Uncle Frank saying that he needed a new school teacher down here in West Springfield. You see, Uncle Frank had been the schoolmaster here, but he was a great war hero in the Mexican-American War. So his expertise was called upon for the Union Army. I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world when Papa said I could come down. You see, Uncle Frank has always been Papa's most respected brother for getting more of an education than he and for being in the Army. Little did I know that being a schoolmistress is much harder than farm work. I fortunately passed my teaching certificate tests, and I started almost immediately as they had canceled school in the interim while Uncle Frank was off fighting and I was preparing. I remember my first day, how I was just brimming with confidence. I seemed to have glossed over all the tricks and pranks that my former classmates and I had pulled on our schoolmistresses and masters over the years at Hartsbrook School in Hadley. Instead, I saw my former classmates just sitting and waiting to learn their 3 R's with slate and slate pencil at the ready. How foolish was I? That first day brought me to tears, for goodness sakes. The oldest boys looming over me, and no one listened, even when I threatened to hit them with my provided hickory stick. And then we used green wood in the stove, smoke everywhere, which was further complicated when I discovered that the older boys had shoved one of the younger girls' cloaks down the stovepipe. I sent them home early with a stern warning not to come back until they could behave. And to think I didn't even have a place to grieve. As a schoolmistress, it is not proper for me to live in this room above the schoolroom, and thus I must board with my students. Absolutely terrible. A different home every 3 weeks, many much cleaner than others. Sometimes I don't even get my own bed. So as I trudged home on that first day, just to face some of my adversaries on their own territory, I didn't think I could do it. But luckily, I did have some scholars on my side. When I arrived at my lodgings that evening, the man of the home told me that I would have trouble no more. You see, the parents of this community pay my salary, and they send their children to school to learn, and they expect them to get the best education possible. And that does not mean being rude to me. As their wrath is much worse than mine, from that first day they have since behaved. And that might have to do with the ringleaders being gone now. It is customary in the summer term for the older boys to be missing, but I know they aren't helping their fathers in the fields. Many of them have joined the Union Army and have gone off to fight. I've even had a few 11-year-olds gone off to be drummer boys. And of course, the ones left behind are steaming mad because they don't get to go and join the fun. I pray for those souls on the battlefields and the ones left at home to stay safe at home. But the 3 R's ring true with or without a war on, and also geography does too. It is difficult to teach geography with a map from 1820 as the face of our great nation has changed, but I do have a copy of Mitchell's World Geography, 2nd Revised Edition, which although is now 15 years old, still works for the most part. I've heard that some schools even have a globe where you get to see the faraway places Mr. Mitchell speaks about. Hopefully we'll have one of those after the war, but seeing as how supplies were scarce before the war happened, it's doubtful. From my readings in here, I've learned that Mr. Mitchell says very accurate things about Massachusetts and her inhabitants, so I believe that what he says about the other states must be true as well. For example, Mr. Mitchell writes, "It is rare to find in any part of the eastern states, meaning New England, persons of mature age who are ignorant of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Here in Massachusetts, we are known for our common school system, started by our Puritan ancestors and fostered by Horace Mann in the 1830s. Mr. Mitchell also writes that Massachusetts is the oldest and most important of the New England states. It is the most thickly settled section of the Union and is distinguished for the enterprise and public spirit of its citizens. The amount of boys and men I've known who have joined up, our spirits couldn't be more of this country in her fight." Mr. Mitchell writes of the southern states, "The inhabitants of the southern states are chiefly occupied in agricultural pursuits. Many of them have large plantations with numerous slaves." He goes on to talk about how the entire cotton crop is raised in the southern states, along with sugar and rice in the deep south. We haven't had any of this since the blockade, so he must be speaking the truth there. He continues with how the wealthy classes are educated and the poor classes and Negroes are not. Mr. Mitchell does not write about the ratios of the classes, but I would say that if the majority were uneducated, it would make sense as to why they would try to wage this war of rebellion. I do find it difficult to believe what Mr. Mitchell says about South Carolina, though. He writes, "The white residents, especially of the lower and middle sections of the state, are chiefly wealthy planters who, in general, have large incomes and are distinguished for their intelligence and refinement." He continues with, "The citizens are noted for their hospitality. The citizens of South Carolina are one of the main reasons we are currently in this war, so I can hardly see how they could be hospitable or intelligent." Now, I haven't met many South Carolinians, or Southerners in general, but I have met a few Negroes. There's this lovely couple who come to my church. Very nice people, although we don't socialize much. They're always there to help out. I believe the husband has even done a little bit of carpentry work on the church. Mr. Mitchell talks about how the Negroes come from the continent of Africa, which is in the barbarous stage of society. Barbarous societies are mainly agricultural and know little about education. Thus, it makes perfect sense why they have entered slavery in numerous places and why they are educated. But I have learned in most cases there are exceptions, and the couple at my church must be it here. I'm glad we have Mr. Mitchell's work, as I know that nearly all of my scholars will never see the faraway places he speaks about. Music has also become a large part of the curriculum here. When I was hired, the examiners asked me if I could play any instruments, and I mentioned how I could play a little bit of the piano, and I also love to sing. Uncle Frank believes that besides needing someone desperately, I was hired for my musical talents. One of our current favorites is Mr. Henry Clayworth's "Brave Boys Are They." We have the whole thing memorized, and we often end the day with it. Now, this lovely schoolhouse isn't just used for school. On days when school is not in session, it's a community hall. You've already heard about the Lyceum tonight, but we also have box suppers where every mother in the community makes a box full of baked goods, which is auctioned off with the proceeds going to the school, of course. We're also all about staying healthy. Just a few weeks ago, we had smallpox vaccines here, and nearly the entire community turned out. And when I'm not busy with those projects or making my 45 lessons, I often help out across the street at the Sanitary Commission, sewing quilts or knitting socks. It gives me comfort to think that they may reach some of the boys we know, that they have a little something from home. And the ladies across the street always know about the happenings of the neighborhood. And they have told me about how some girls have gone down to Washington, D.C. to help the wounded in the hospitals and on the battlefields. I think I may try my hand at that at the end of term. Oh, how my father would disapprove. But I also hope this war will be over by then. I just wish those Southerners would come to their senses and stop this silly war of rebellion. Oh my, look at the time. I've rattled on too long. Well, if you're staying for the Lyceum, wonderful, but I know it's a full house. You had to sign up in advance. They're doing readings from Shakespeare tonight, very popular. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for stopping by. Yay!
So the Lyceum people can get in.